The government continually references this stat that 80% of Indigenous people are supporting The Voice. How does their messaging around supporting Indigenous communities align with some of what we're talking here, some of the nuance and complexity of individual perspectives from Indigenous communities?
Well, I think the Albanese government, the Prime Minister particularly, is upset at the way that the prominence of a few Indigenous Australians in the No campaign, Warren Mundine and Jacinta Price, has given the impression that it's extremely contested. Now, I know that claim itself is contested, and I know the 80% stat is outdated, and that its support and opposition is a lot closer than that. But that he does feel, and you can hear his frustration in these interviews about the media presentation of it, that too much airtime is given to a sort of conservative No being led by a few prominent campaigners. And he also, the terms of the debate, he thinks are riddled with sort of red herrings that aren't logically connected to the question on the ballot. So the government's attempt is to maximise to talk up the number of Indigenous Australians that support yes, and to try and focus on the question, not on some of the other elements that have been introduced into the debate. But he's unashamedly campaigning for yes.
Look, I find that the claim of the 83% of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people support a voice in the Constitution based on a poll which is now significantly out of date and was pretty limited in the community, the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander community at large. The discussion is really robust. Yet what is dominating the media isn't the robust Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander community discussion. It's talking points from conservatives out there. It's misinformation from certain commentators. A lot of it doesn't actually represent the very real conversations that our mobs are having all across the country as to whether this is or isn't the best way forward. What they're saying are things like they don't really trust the government. There's a long history of promises being broken, of not being listened to by successive governments. So there's a deep community mistrust. Or we're seeing things like, we need to protect our rights first through some sort of treaty agreement, or even further than that, we're seeing people really reinforce the concept of sovereignty, saying, well, we've never ceded sovereignty. So the claim that this government and their constitution has rights over Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, and we should be included in that, is in and of itself offensive. We've got our own understandings of this land, our own legal frameworks that are ancient, and it's about time Australia actually came to the table and started talking about that. So that's not the sorts of arguments that we're seeing play out in the media right now, the complexity of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander views.
The other thing I would say on polling is not a good representative sample in order to get a view on what First Nations people think. Some polling experts have come out and said that maybe the support is potentially around 50%, but then also explained why it is notoriously hard to poll First Nations people in national polls and that sort of stuff. But also I would say on this is that First Nations people, we have our own governance and decision-making and political structures and decision-making structures as well. The idea of just, if you think about, one vote, one person, the idea of individualism, when we go out and talking to mob around why to vote, mostly we talk around collectivising the vote within communities and that sort of stuff, because that makes sense in terms of how we make decisions. I would say right now our communities are in a decision-making space where they are talking about something and they haven't formed a firm view on it. And so that, we'll come to that decision in our own time. Hopefully it's before referendum day, but it might not be. We've always been a community who's had to strategise and work out where we're going together, which is the sad thing about this is actually I believe that our communities are really capable of coming to a consensus decision. I just don't think that we've had the time in the lead up to this campaign.